Hey, David here. You are invited to view a very special presentation that was recorded very recently and hosted by none other than our own Dr. Greg Linney and Dr. Ben Jensen. This was a practice panel, a practice transition panel that we did because we have a number of members, you may be one of them, who is either contemplating the sale or harvesting some equity from your practice. You may be in the middle of it right now, walking down that path, not quite to the finish line, or you may have completed it. We had people on both sides of this on a panel that was done very, very well, I must say. And the key elements that came out, the key constructs, the points that need to be considered before going down such a path were very, very relevant to where we are in the marketplace today. And I will say this is a very special time in our economic history. We'll look back on this time with certainly the adverse elements of COVID, which has been nothing but a nuisance at the bare minimum, but also where we are in this craziness where we have so much money that is floating through the economy created by our own special government and the Federal Reserve. It's good and bad. It's only bad if you don't position yourself to utilize it. And that doesn't mean everybody should be selling their practice right now. Not at all. If you've got a practice that's running well and you're looking to stay in it for a number of years, still look at it from the standpoint of how can I continue to build this practice so it would be sellable at some point. Jim Rocker made the point that just build it to sell, even if you don't plan on selling it soon. It will make your practice better. Great points brought out. You'll find some key elements here. Watch this video and make for great discussions with some of these people and others that are on our group that we didn't have room to invite them all because they've also gone through the same phases of transition. The wealth and the wisdom collectively in our group is something you do not want to not take for granted, but you don't want to not utilize it, is my point. The key constructs here are something that can move the needle for you and make a huge difference. Don't run solo in life. Watch this video, talk to these folks. We'll have more of these conversations in the near future. Take care.
You have all been chosen, either you're going to sell or you have sold. And I would just love to hear some of the stories and some of the input and and there's one thing that we're going to kind of ask each of you is now, particularly you guys, gals that have gone through it or you've already sold, looking back, what would you have done a little bit differently? And was there a way to make it easier on yourself? And then we'll kind of go from there. So if you don't mind, Jim, because I saw you first, if a little bit about, I know you just recently sold, so I haven't heard anything about what you've done. Who did you sell to, a DSO? What'd you do?
So, I mean, yeah, I sold to a group called Cherry Tree Dental. Ben knows about them. Truth be told, Mike Abernathy brought them to my doorstep. I did nothing. So I give Mike Abernathy all of the glory. Mike had a guy that he knew who sold to this company, and I sent him all of my financials. Concurrently in Michigan, my practice is like 70% Delta Dental. I can't raise my fees,
right?
Really, and I can't. It's hard to run a business that's a high-tech business when you are constrained by someone else telling you what you can charge. Plus, I knew that there's a correction looming. And I also realized that Wall Street money was drying up and this overpayment might go away. And I knew that there's a little window of time. 2 years ago, I talked to David about it. And after he wrote that great book, Selling Your Practice, and about 5 other people and asked what I should do. At the time, it wasn't a good idea. But this time, I met with the guy that Mike brought to the table. And then also with COVID and staff and how staff are trying to run the practice, even though we were back from COVID, everybody wanted to raise, and everybody wanted this and wanted that. And I was like, gosh, I don't know if I have it in me to go through a downturn again, right, and try to build up the practice and then sell it for a high dollar amount. And I just praise God for it, really, because in came this group that said, look, we'll buy it. We'll give you all your money now. You can leave in 120 days. You can keep working. You can work the days you've been working or less. and you can not change what you're doing. And I was like, and I can own my building with a triple net lease. And the comedy of it really is that Mike Abernathy basically, I'll just say this, he basically wrote the counteroffer, and I said, I can't. I mean, I got $1 million more than I should get, and so it's been weird because it went quick, and I wanted to get it done before 2022 started because of the present administration and taxation and what have you. It saved me a lot of money. And so really what I'm seeing is Wall Street money is going to be gone. Right. I think this company owns 35, 38 practices. They're going to bundle it and sell it at some point, probably. I mean, I'm not that obtuse to not know that that's what's going to happen. But I was seeing Delta Dental buy practices in Michigan and open them up. They could open up right next door to me if they wanted, right, and take away all of my market share. I didn't really need the money to sell, but it's a lot more fun when you have it. I felt like there was a limited cycle here. It was hard to get the financials up where they were, right, and keep them up there and then sell, because if there was a downturn or something crazy happened, it was stressful to keep everybody motivated, everybody on their process. And really, they're paying me 36% of collections. I mean, basically, when I ran my numbers after COVID and after cutting people, but yet having to give everybody raises to keep them, knowing I was going to sell, my overhead was probably 75%. I mean, I'm getting a raise actually. Yeah. And the fact that I don't have to sit and do all this junk, oh my land. I mean, I had just things that come up. I just go, no, I sold. It's best. I love saying that. Right. And so my advice really would be, it's the best time in the world to sell and remove equity right now. And if it's a business like it is, you should harvest your equity now. That's my opinion. Also, I would have got my practice ready to sell a lot earlier. I would have gotten myself out of it. If you're working in your own business and you can't leave, well, you're an employee. So that's not even a real business. So
on a follow up with that, your numbers, a hell of a story and just impressive number that you got. And even knowing that you didn't know you were going to get that number, you were obviously prepared to take that step. So obviously something with Freedom Founders, as far as what you've been doing with your passive income, you must have had that assurance that, hey, I don't even, you even said it, do I even really need that money? So if you don't mind, just a few seconds about that, about where you were thinking in that spot, even though you didn't know what you were going to get, you were ready to walk.
So for me, we created a family office, and not in the sense that most people think about. In a sense that it's another business that has a holding company, a management company, and it has about 30 entities in it that creates passive income in several different modalities. That is where I was going to harvest and house my my tax deductions I usually could have done out of my business. For me, that was huge because I run everything through my business. Waiting for an audit, but I was ready to overdo it and answer later, as opposed to miss a year or two of total deductions. So knowing I could run expenses through a business, knowing I had my freedom number, and knowing that I had several options and I could still work, was paramount to me to be able to make the move. Then it was really, letting it happen. And I think people see that, as far as buyers too, if they feel like you're just dying, that you're not going to get a good sale. Right. There was no haggling in this case. I could care less either way. I could just keep doing what I was doing too. But I think knowing I had my freedom number and knowing that I had cash flow that was had been sustainable for 2 or 3 years, right? And knowing how to preserve it, mitigate taxes, and hedge inflation all at one time. David has a great program here where you can get a glimpse of the future and not be watching the stock market like, right, is going up or down or what. So that really made me feel a lot better.
I appreciate the share and congratulations. I was so excited to hear the story because I heard it. heard you had done it, but didn't know the facts. So well done, and really, really great. Thanks for the share.
Thank you. And thank you, David, really for all you do for me and done for me. And also putting together the team at Freedom Founders that, you know, I mean, really, I don't know what I did, maybe 1% of the deal, but Mike Abernathy, Larry Pino, David, of course, my CPA, I let them go. In fact, I think they might have said, I shouldn't, I'll say it just because it's funny, but Jim, don't blow it. Don't get in the middle and ruin it.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay. My wife's like, yeah, I told you, you know, stay out of it. And I'm having a hard time, but I did, and that was good. So
good job. Ben, obviously, please jump in questions or whatever you have.
Will do.
So Tommy, again, when I'm asking just kind of an overview of what you've got, how did Freedom Founders get, you know, maybe, you know, how did Freedom Founders move you along further than if you were out on your own and helped you understand that part?
Well, I want to ride on Jim's coattail a little bit because my numbers are almost identical to his sale. I actually partnered. There's, you know, you mentioned, Greg, that you can sell to a younger dentist, you can go to a DSO. Well, I partnered with a company called MB2 Dental, which is located in Carrollton, which is right here in the Metroplex. David, I don't know if you know much about MB2, but MB2 has 381 practices as of December 31st under their belt. I wouldn't have had the courage probably to even look at this had I not joined the Freedom Founders family, as I call it. But I was looking at a couple of DSOs back in probably 2019, the end of 2019. I knew based on our blueprint day what our freedom number was, and Candace and David were so helpful in that. But it gave me the courage to really look and say, you know what, I mean, I'd saved and I'd probably, you know, done pretty well as far as saving. But when I found MB2, and I had a colleague that was practicing in Canton, Texas, that I spoke to last Snowmageddon on the phone for about an hour and a half, and he had partnered with him. I did the due diligence on it, and I decided in March of 2021 that this is the direction I wanted to go. They closed in 90 days. The numbers were very similar to what Jim did, but basically what I do now is I practice for fun. I didn't want to get out of dentistry. What I have found in so many examples is my next door neighbor, for example, is a dentist. We're very close friends. He was tired when he sold. He wanted to walk away. He was done. Well, I still love and want to practice. And so now I practice for fun. So basically, I wanted to find a way to transition. The freedom number was met, is well at hand. But now I enjoy practicing dentistry for fun. So that has been so good for my family. We're one of the things about tonight's call, I almost thought, well, can I do this? Because we're leaving to go to Orlando in the morning to go to Disney World and take my youngest granddaughter. So I'm doing things now that I want to do. And I hope it doesn't come across as sounding arrogant. I just know I've worked for 36 years to get to this point. And David, Freedom Founders, has given me a courage to do so many things that I probably would not have done without the knowledge base that I have now. So, like I said, a partnership, and let me just briefly digress and say, I still run my practice. I sold 70% of my practice to MB2. So I still have a 30% ownership, which allows me to draw down on 30% of a monthly distribution as far as profits every month. And I can walk this in my negotiation, which Michael Abernathy was crucially instrumental in looking at all the contracts. We actually had an attorney look, but he said, Tommy, this actually is it sounds a little bit too good to be true. Are you giving me all the paperwork to you? And I said, 100%. He said, it's kind of like Jim said, don't mess this up. You know, this will allow you to continue to practice. You can continue to take monthly distributions because you still are a 30% owner. And literally, all I lost was a couple of things. I lost the ability to do payroll. I lost the ability to hire and fire. And I also lost all those miles on my American Advantage card that I was charging all those. Other than that, I have not looked back. I have not looked back at all. Awesome. And I am 100% satisfied and happy.
Thank you, Tommy. That's just excellent.
I mean, But it's all a God thing. Their culture, probably one of the older dentists in the group. I think their average age when they buy these practices is 42.
Right.
So I'm kind of the older guy. But nevertheless, I have mentored some of the younger dentists in that group, and it has been an incredible experience for me.
Hey, Tommy,
Go ahead, Ben.
just out of curiosity, you know, from the perspective of somebody who has not sold his practice yet and is kind of staring down the barrel of that, I know I've kind of made this decision in my own mind, kind of through some support that I've gotten through the Freedom Founders group. But can you kind of share just a little bit about kind of what you gained from Freedom Founders that kind of gave you the courage to make that step? Because I feel like that's a pretty big threshold to step across for some of us. For some of us that are, you know, ready to hang it up and ready to run away as quick as possible, you know, maybe that's not quite so hard. But for, you know, that's the way I came to Freedom Founders. I was ready to leave like that. But now I probably have a little bit more trepidation because I'm afraid to step away from something that I love, kind of like you did. Can you share with me just a little bit about kind of what kind of a mind shift did you make, or did you have to make, and how did Freedom Founders influence that?
Ben, believe it or not, I watched your video of you and your wife and your two boys yesterday, and I actually sat at my desk and I was going back through the website, and I just wanted to see what someone would see if they were looking to join with Freedom Founders. And I watched your video yesterday, and it was uplifting, and it was fun. I don't know 100% if I can answer your question, other than it just gave me, in other words, it's like almost like if someone breathes air into your lungs and you decide this is what I want to do. It's almost a surreal experience that I've had since I've been a part of Freedom Founders. It's almost like working out or running, and you say, well, you know what? I think now I'm going to run a marathon. So I guess I would say that when I met David and we had our blueprint day, which I think y'all are doing them a little bit differently now, David, but it just kind of gave me wind underneath my wings to go and do what I felt like I needed to do. That's simply the way I can put it. That day with Candace and David, it just gave me a push that I needed. And that's as simply as I can put it.
I think you nailed it. Good.
Dude, that was great.
Appreciate
Tommy,
it.
it's been great watching your journey from the beginning to now, and it's just fantastic.
Well, Greg, you and Jackie, everyone plays a part in this thing. This family, it's like David has said on so many of his podcasts, this culture, and MB2 has a culture as well. And I found a foothold in that. But this culture, sometimes can't describe what it enables you to do, and the friendships that we've developed, and just sometimes just somebody just giving you that extra nudge that you need is so helpful. But I will say this: I do now practice dentistry for fun.
Good for you. That's great.
100%.
Thank you for sharing, Tommy.
100%.
I really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Greg.
All right, David Sharp, I want to hear your story, sir.
I'm like the bride that walked down the aisle 2 times and didn't get married. So, you know, I had started, you know, I had signed up with a broker a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, whatever, and 6-month deal. They brought me a deal at the end of 6 months. They said, this is the greatest thing since, you know, macaroni and cheese, whatever. You don't want to let it slip away. Sign the LOI right away. Sign the LOI. And this was like maybe December before COVID. So almost 2 years, actually 2 years ago last month. And then I called about 7 attorneys to try and find one. 6 of them were all set to do the deal for me. And the 7th guy said, let's talk about why you want to do the deal. And actually, when I showed him the deal, he talked me out of it. He says, do you realize this is terrible? You're giving away your practice. So he actually talked me out of it. That was in maybe January. And then in March, you know, we shut down for COVID.
Right.
So I had but I was like done, you know, I just didn't want to practice anymore. And that's, you know, really what attracted me to Freedom Founders. It was the summer of 2020, and I'm flipping through Facebook and, you know, all that stuff. I was just like finished. So then incidentally, someone turned me on to MB2, and I had started to head down that path with them last November, about a year ago. And I was all set to pay the old broker commission because I had an obligation to him for, you know, for a year, even though he was dishonest, but I was going to honor that. And anyway, but Noah called me up. I was negotiating a LOI, and he said, "You're going to miss. Just so you know, you're going to miss the recap. They thought they're going to recap." And at that point, it didn't pay to, because I wanted to get my money out. So at that point, it didn't pay to rush into it. So let me just wait till I'm done with the old broker. I don't owe him anything. We'll start again. And it ended up being like a blessing, because, the year after COVID, between being busy and raising the fees, I was up 35, almost 40%. So like the stars just aligned. My practice, I'm a periodontist, and my practice, it was not to brag, but it's just way too big. Like no periodontist could ever buy my practice, because they're not me. They couldn't run it like me. You need like 3 dentists coming out of school to do it. And I just, so my choices were either sell to a DSO or just like slowly wind it down and walk away someday. But that's not my nature to do. And although I didn't need the money, thank goodness, it was too much money to leave on the table. And I just couldn't see, okay, you cut back, and then having to find an associate, and that guy leaves, and then you put more hours back. I just wanted to be able to leave and work as much or as little as I wanted. So I listed my practice with a different broker who was just night and day in terms of their professionalism, what they brought to the table. And then that was last summer. I had my shoulder surgery, and then while I was out from the shoulder surgery or shortly thereafter, he got an above market offer from a DSO who wanted my practice because they bought up a couple of the perio practices in my area. So it was significantly better than the MB2 offer that I had gotten, which was a very fair offer at the time. And I decided to do it. I was committed to selling my practice. It was just a question of, to who. And so for me, the paint is still wet. I just closed, tomorrow is 3 weeks. So it still smells like smells like spackle when I walk into the office. But it's a great feeling. Number one, I think what Freedom Founders gave me was like almost permission to just take my foot off the gas pedal, if I have to really say it any other way. Some of you may know my story, but when I was in my 30s, I lost all my money to an unscrupulous financial advisor. So I had over $1 million in my early 30s just through savings and working hard, and I lost all that. And I just made up my mind. I became super conservative. I was like a depression baby. I couldn't work hard enough to make back for my stupidity. And when you look at, to me, when I looked at retiring with the stock market, and you look at a 3% or 4% rule, there could just never be enough, because you just never knew what the market was going to do. And so with Freedom Founders, I was able to really take, a small portion of my assets. I mean, maybe a third of my money, I looked the other day, is invested in real estate, but it's more than enough, to live on. The DSO didn't buy my building, but I own my building. And that alone is about a third of my monthly nut, my freedom number. So it didn't take all that much, for the rest of it. But like the last, this week, like a lot of you guys who are still working, COVID just destroyed the schedule. I mean, you come in every day, it's like Swiss cheese. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. It just doesn't bother. It just doesn't bother me in the least, right? As where, before I think, oh my God, I got 4 assistants and 2 hygienists, and I'm paying them all this money. And, my Miley dishwasher broke the other day. The girl's like, oh, we heard this snapping noise and it broke, and that thing's a expense to fix. I'm like, it's all right, just call. So, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have let those things bother me anyway, because there was plenty of money coming in. But, it just doesn't. It's just nice now. I slowed down. They're going to bring in another periodontist, so I can work as much or as little as I want, really. So not having that pressure is nice. I like, same like you. I don't have an earn out. I got all my money up front, which is nice. And I got, almost 2.5, almost 3 times annual collections from these people. And that's just, I figured my financial plan as no practice sale at all, because up until 5 years ago, DSOs weren't buying specialty practices. And periodontists aren't buying practices either. I own like this expensive dinosaur. So this was just, just a blessing. And I guess the other thing it did for me is, I always wondered like what I would do when I stopped practicing, because I have to keep the wheels turning. But I really like real estate. I like reading about it. I like reading the PPMs. I like, doing all that stuff. And I don't know if I told you the story, David, but to me, like I had this aha moment. So my aha moment was there's a local real estate guys that I've invested a couple of deals in, and I trusted them implicitly. So although I kind of skimmed the PPM, I had no idea what I was reading. And I read the latest one and I found this fee, but they charged a fee if they sold the property. And it seemed excessive to me, that fee, based on, it was like half the profit, whatever it was way too high. And so I looked through my notes and I said, yep, that fee shouldn't be that. And I emailed them, and I was like the 20th investor in this syndication. I emailed them and say, this fee seems excessive. Why is that? And they're like, we don't have that fee in the PPM. I'm like, yes, you do. And I sent him a screenshot. He goes, that was a mistake. And I believed them that it was a mistake. But I felt really good that, hey, look how much I learned in a year and a half, that I could read this thing that before was like Chinese to me. And now I could understand it. So that was a great feeling. The only advice I have, I think, to someone who's, if I were to look at my own mistakes, I think if you're going to go the DSO route, for me anyway, getting the right attorney before you even sign the broker agreement is critical. So like that first broker agreement, you know, we're all pretty cheap. At least I am. And my sister's an attorney and she's a good attorney, right? But I had to read that agreement and she made a couple of changes and said, okay, you know, it's good to sign. But it was so vague. Like it would say, you know, a commission is due to the broker upon consummation of the deal. Well, what exactly does that mean? Consummation of the deal. Is that the LOI? Is that a handshake? Is that money in the bank? There were things in there. There was no language as to automatic extensions, right? So the broker was claiming there was an automatic extension. I was claiming there wasn't, this first broker. But in reality, okay, so I could have said no, but he would have tied me up in a lawsuit for how much money, for how long to settle. So when I started the second time around, I was lucky enough that I already had a great attorney. Just to give you an example, so this new broker, in the agreement, he disclosed that he got, sometimes they get a commission from the buyer. Sometimes the buyer will pay this broker a commission to bring them good deals. And my lawyer said, no, that should not be in there at all. You want him just working for you, right? So the broker said, okay, we'll take it out. And then being the mistrusting person I am, I said, well, we'll never know if he's getting that money or not, right? So the broker offered, he said, I'll either take it out, I'll give you half of it, right? So that was 3% of a very big number. And just to give you a sense, so just taking half of that number paid, you know, all the legal fees and then some. And my legal bill was over $100,000 for my transition, just to give you an idea. So just a small thing like that, like the $5,000 or $7,000 I spent negotiating the broker agreement came back in spades. And I think as dentists, we all try to think we can do it ourselves, or I'll ask my buddy for some help, whatever. But I think having, you know, good legal representation is just critical. And the other thing I learned is that if you own your own building, they try and, at least my DSO, they tried to squeeze me on the lease. Like they didn't even get us the lease maybe until 10 days before we wanted to close. And we had the end of the year coming, and like we wanted to close for tax reasons. So they really started to squeeze us on the lease. And if I had had a partner in the building, I could have blamed the partner. I said, look, I'd love to do it and close the deal, but my partner says no. So I agreed to some things that weren't deal breakers for me, but I probably wouldn't have done if it were any other tenant. So I think if you have your own building, try and, like, you know, put your brother, your cousin on the building, someone you can trust that you can get off after the deal, so he can be the bad guy.
Good job.
See if I have anything else I wanted to mention. No, that was it. I think for me, like I said, just kind of permission to realizing that I had way more than enough and that I should just change my thinking, and it's okay to take my foot off the gas. So that's what made the biggest difference for me. And it's good to see you all in some faces I haven't seen in my fit group in a while. So it's nice to see everybody.
Great job, David. You know, it's interesting having been with you at the beginning, and it was interesting at the last meeting when I saw you, there was a huge weight off your shoulders. It was kind of like all of a sudden this part of your trust. And I think that it's kind of like part of what Ben was alluding to a little earlier is that trust that it's going to work out, the trust that it's going to be okay, trust that you can trust this group, these people, this knowledge. And you really took that to heart and ran with it and really made yourself such a great deal. So really, really happy to see where you're at. So great job.
Thanks. Thank you. Couldn't have done it without the group, that's for sure.
Yeah. Great job.
Thank
All
you.
right, James, how about you, sir?
Hi. Everybody good this evening?
Yeah.
Okay. I've told David and Candace this and a couple of y'all, but Sarah, my wife, will tell you that going to Freedom Founders is probably the best thing we ever did professionally together when we found it. It just totally changed the way we thought. You know, just like all of you guys, we're all successful. We all work hard. We put our nose to the grindstone, and it seems like you practice and practice and practice, and the stock market eats things up, but you just focus on practicing. And the first time we went to Freedom Founders, I went to a little 2-day thing in Dallas, and then I took Sarah and we went out to San Diego, and we joined in November of 2019. And after the first day, she said, we need to do this. And because, you know, she's watching me work myself to death. And like everybody wondering, is there enough, or when do you stop, or what do you do? And never really hadn't crossed my mind about selling my practice. But I had brought in a young associate. And so we had our Freedom, our blueprint day with David and Candace. And one of the things that they pointed out was that I was trying to do too much everything, and that we needed better organization and some different things to come off. And so he introduced us to EOS guy. And, you know, just one thing, but we did EOS, and we started EOS when COVID hit. So we closed for 6 weeks, and we spent that 6 weeks doing EOS. And the EOS guy said, he's looking at the numbers in the practice, and he said, have you ever thought about selling? And I never really had. And so that was the first time we really started thinking about it. So we wouldn't have even gone down this path if it wasn't for Freedom Founders. I mean, it's just totally changed the way we did things. And thankfully we got out of the market, and, you know, really between 2 years ago and now, you know, things just are a whole lot better for us, you know, a lot more peace and a lot more looking forward. And I actually did my transition. I'm not really transitioned, you know, some of y'all know, but I have 2 practices. One practice is a startup, and I still have it. And I have my main practice. And what I did was I brought in a younger dentist, and he had been as an associate, and I went ahead and sold him part of the practice at a traditional valuation, which was pretty high. But I had to not carry the note, but I had to co-sign the note at the bank. So I set the whole thing up. So he's got a little over $1 million note and making payments. But over the course of a year, mentoring him and building the practice up, we almost tripled the value on the market of the practice. So we decided, you know, talking to people that it was time to start looking at it for the same reasons as a lot of you. You know, how much longer is the money going to be out there? But so we started shopping and hadn't even decided to do it. And we wound up with a group that's, I think, a really great group. And we talked to several, we got offers from a lot of the bigger DSOs, but we went with a small group. They had about 20 practices at that time. They closed 5 practices, including ours, in December. So they're about 25 right now. And they're very customized to each office. So we were able to get what we needed, and they were very amenable to customizing the contracts and the terms of the deal and that sort of thing. And my partner was able to get his note gone. I was able to get off the note and get quite a bit of, you know, money up front. And we still have some equity, and they're actually planning a recap coming up in the next 6 months or so. But they've been great to work with. And the terms, like I said, now I will say, you know, and you and I talked about this, Greg, you know, as far as a broker goes, and he did a great job of putting our package together and making introductions. When it came time to really start negotiating, our attorney really stepped in a lot and helped. Mm-hmm. And so it is really important that you have a good team. The attorney that we used is a dental attorney who I've used in multiple deals in the past, and he really knows his business. And we negotiated things out right to the very end. And so having him there to, you know, he got to the point where he said, this is, you know, I'm going to say, I don't think you're going to get much more. And I would ask for something else. And, you know, I was really worried about our team. You know, Sarah and I, they're like our family. We're one of those offices. They've all been with us forever. And we wanted to make sure they were taken care of, and, you know, things didn't go south. So, and we're not quitting. We're still practicing, you know, part-time, but I don't really have a lot of restrictions on things. So let's see. For me, it was good to bring in a young dentist ahead of time and let him have some equity. For other people, it wouldn't be as attractive to give up that option. And I have another friend who's done that, and now the younger doctor standing in the way of them being able to get a deal. So, you know, you have to get the right person. Let's see what else. That's basically it. We just closed it. We just closed at the end of the year also. One thing that did happen, and I'll back up on some of the points some people put, the brokers, contract, the agreement, I did go through that with my attorney before I signed it. And we took quite a few clauses out of it that were in there. One thing was he had put in the contract that if there was any deal made as far as leasing my building or selling my building, that he got a 7% real estate commission on that deal.
No way.
And so I took that out, and he said, well, I'm a licensed real estate agent. And I said, well, that's great, but no. So we took that, and we weren't planning to do anything with the building. As it turned out, I actually sold the building.
Oh, wow.
But so we took that out. We kind of changed the terms quite a bit, because there are some things in those contracts that lock you in, you know, under a lot of circumstances. You know, this particular contract, if you didn't sell, if you changed your mind, but you took on an associate in the next however long, then you had to pay them a commission, whether they brought them or not, some things like that. So paying attention to the broker's contract, and the brokers, they serve a purpose for sure. You know, they found the people for us, but having a really good attorney to look at those things with you is a big help. And from the real estate perspective, they kept wanting to buy the practice, the building. And my building I owned in a partnership with my partner up here is a plastic surgeon. So we have a fairly large building with a plastic surgery office and operating room and all that stuff together. And I said, you know, it's not for sale, it's not for sale, it's not for sale, it's not for sale. And they kept coming back with better. Ultimately, they got to a high enough number that it was like, okay, we have to think about this. And so I went to the plastic surgeon. He lives around the block on a Sunday afternoon. I said, you know, I got an offer for this. He's like, why are we even talking about this? So we wound up selling the building as well. So
Good deal. Well, congratulations. I knew
it's turned out well.
Involved. Yeah, that's great. And I knew it was going to be involved because we had talked about it, but
yeah,
I mean, it was clear you structured it. And that's what's so unique as you listen to all these stories. You structured it that works for you. You know,
right.
I wanted out, I didn't want to do, but there are a lot of people like you guys that want to continue working. And I think it's great to structure the deal that works for you and have that confidence to do it that way. So that's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent job. Thank you for the share.
Yeah.
All right, Mark.
Well, I got into Freedom Founders a year ago in December, and it was at the point where, you know, I was thinking about getting out, and it's like, well, how do I go about this? How do I replace my income? And just sort of surfing the internet, found the thing for Freedom Founders and watched some of the videos and decided that I needed to go to the meeting, and went to the meeting and said, yeah, this is something I really need to do, and have really appreciated all of the learning experience and the feedback I've gotten from people and talking to the TAs and everything. I've grown a lot and learned a lot in the last year. But you know, I decided I was going to sell my practice, and I wasn't sure, you know, I wanted to continue that long. You know, would hang around for a few months to, you know, transition the practice to the new guy or whatever. And I was approached by MB2 and several other of the DSO groups, and you know, they gave me offers. They, you know, they just didn't knock my socks off or anything. And all of them, you know, one of them wanted me to go out and find 2 other practices to make my practice over a $3 million practice, because I have about $1 million practice. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do all the work for you guys. And then, you know, and then you want me to stick around for 5 years or whatever afterwards. That's not happening. Right. And so then, as some of you know, I had worked as a broker for part-time for 2 years, a couple of years ago. And so, you know, I was relying on some of the information I had gotten from that. And so I talked to them, and they gave me a really reduced fee on their percentage for, you know, brokering the practice. And I went with them, and like within 2 weeks, they brought me two people. One was a fairly young dentist who was trying to start a DSO type situation. They came in, and it was more of a traditional offer on the practice instead of the EBITDA and all that. And so they came in and made an offer actually over what I was asking for the practice. And then like within 2 days, another buyer came in, a private practice person who offered me a fair amount over the asking price and over the price that had been offered by the other person. And the young guy that was gonna try to start the group, he was gonna bring a dentist right out of school in and put him in. And his dad was a business guy, and they were gonna manage the business and guide the younger dentist. And I just wasn't sure that was gonna work in the type of practice I had. And, you know, I've had a very, very family oriented practice. I treat people like they're part of my family, and have, you know, very loyal following and stuff. So anyway, I wasn't sure I wanted a new kid coming out of school, coming in and doing that. So anyway, I was talking to the other, who's a private practice dentist. He's been in the area for 17 years, and he was in a part of Phoenix that has gone downhill a little bit, and wanted to move to a nicer area. So he wanted to come in. So he came in and basically said, "What do you want for the practice?" And I told him, and kind of shot a high number, and he's like, "Okay, and what do you want for the building?" And I have an 11,000 square foot building. There's 4 suites in it. There's a vascular surgeon, another dentist, myself, and then an empty suite. And he's like, "Yeah, I want the building too. What do you want for that?" And I had an offer when the MB2 group came in, they had made an offer on the building. And so, but it was a fair offer, but it wasn't a great offer. And then, so this guy said, "What do you want for the building?" And I raised the price a fair amount and said, "This is what I want for the practice and the building." And he said, "Okay, let's get this done."
Wow.
So I was able to sell the practice and the building, and it's not final yet, but everything seems to be going through. And I was also I was using a separate broker for the building, because we were trying to lease out the empty space. We weren't trying to sell the building. After the last meeting and talking to Mike Abernathy and Larry Pino, I decided to keep the building and just, you know, collect the rents and everything, because that was a good situation I had with that. And then when this guy came in and said, you know, if I buy the practice, I have to have the building too. So, and it was kind of like, make me an offer I can't refuse, and he did. So, so that's worked out well. And it's at a point where we just signed the initial letter for the building Monday, and then we're going to be closing on both the practice and the building by February 28th. So that's where we're at with all that. And then and it's basically, I was saying, I've been talking to Big Mike and Greg Hughes and several others about you know, options for trying to keep my tax liability as to a minimum. There's still going to be tax to pay, and I'm willing to do that. But at the same time, it's, you know, I'm ready to move on to my next.
Right.
And you know, so I only want to practice. I'm only going to practice for 6 months,
Good.
2 days a week, and then we'll go from there. So that's where
That's
I'm at.
exciting.
Hey,
So,
Mark,
yeah.
could you share what size of community do you live in, Mark?
I live in Phoenix,
Okay.
in Northwest Phoenix in Glendale. So it's and the area where my office is a fairly affluent area. My office is right in front of the guy that owns Swift Trucking. It's right in front of his house. So 14,000 square foot house is right behind in my backyard. So so it's a nice area. I have frontage on a nice street, and yeah, it's a good area. So.
That's great.
Congrats. That's
Mark,
fantastic.
thank you. That's a great story, and glad to, I mean, I know that's the direction you've been going because I knew you were ready to get out, and I'm just glad to hear that it's going to work out. And it
Yeah,
will.
and I was losing sleep before I started
Yeah.
with Freedom Founders on, what are we going to do? How am I going to replace my income? What's going to happen with all this? And I'm in a much better place right now.
Yeah, you've
So,
got this. There's no question.
yeah.
Well,
So thank you,
everybody,
David.
absolutely. Everybody that shared, all of you are either brought to sell or sold or whatever. And I thank you for your stories because it is a clear view of everything is so different. I mean, like we were saying earlier, some want to continue, some want to get out, like Mark and I, and it doesn't really matter because we meet whatever our needs are. What are our family needs? What is that spouse, if there's a spouse at home, what does that look like? And we're going to go to Bob and Gertrude next because I think they have, they're in the process, and their story was so vivid to us that we're on the FIT call because we got to meet Gertrude first and she was worried about Bob. And next time I see Bob on the next call is, they're worried, what are we going to do? And then a few calls later, a month later, 2 months later, all of a sudden the world has changed. So share your story a little bit if you don't mind, Gertrude, Bob.
Okay. All right. Wow. Back in 2018, I had injured both hands. So after that, I had to cut back doing the things that I did. So that meant good old Bob here had to do most of the work. Luckily, at that time, we had hired an associate who's still with us. So he was able to help. He does mainly the root canals in our office. Wow. Okay, so around the beginning of February of 2021, Bob had said, I can see myself stepping away from the clinical side of dentistry because he was so tired, so overwhelmed. We have, 10 people in our office, 10 staff full-time, lots of patients. And he was definitely getting tired. At the same time, he felt responsibility to all of the staff.
Right.
What can we do to help them? We have to help them until we came to Freedom Founders. And David helped us to see that we don't have to support 10 people for the rest of our lives. And that was a complete mind shift especially for Bob. And so that's what happened. After our blueprint day, David said, well, why don't you sell? Oh, wow. I mean, we had been trying to hire an associate to buy us out or, become part owner. We had been trying since 2018, but we had maybe 6 different associates and none of them worked out. They just, didn't want to work. They would come in 5 minutes after start time and leave 5 minutes before end time and didn't want to take calls, stuff like that. So we started very quickly. We joined in March, Freedom Founders last year, and we started right away deploying funds because we thought, okay, in case we sell really fast, we have to have some income. So, we spent pretty much all of last year getting all that prepared. And I said, well, I hope we don't sell too soon. Well, we haven't sold yet. So, but we're in the process right now. So yeah, it should be this month.
So, I mean, at the beginning, I really didn't feel I could even retire. Or
Right.
not say retire, but just get out of the practice because I felt like I was handcuffed to the practice. And so seeing, getting the blueprint really showed us a way that I could find a way out of practicing or at least working in my office, feeling like I had to work there for the staff and the patients. So financially, I found out where is a way we can get out without having to continue practicing after 35 years. So that was a comfort for me to realize there is a way out. So, David did that for us and through the blueprint. So we just kind of went in this, started really quick. We didn't get we had a blueprint before we went to any fit team or we didn't even know what we're doing. Just sign us up. We jumped right in. So we went, I think we had a blueprint a week or two before the meeting, and it was all new. It was like, what the heck's going on here? But I mean, since then, we've just learned so much about, what's available, and meeting all these TAs and learning how to deploy and just feeling a lot more freedom of what's going to happen to us. So we've been started deploying, I think it was May. We started deploying right away. And then we put the practice on the market, I think July. We had 4 or 5 people offers right away the first week. So we've been working. So we found somebody that is willing to buy the practice. It's not a DSO. It's a person starting a DSO. It's kind of a mini DSO. We're in Sacramento, near San Francisco. So this gentleman, he started 3 other practices. He's trying to start his own little DSO going on. I think it's going to work out fantastic. It's been a slower process because it's not a big corporation. So he's got to get the funding. So we're going through the process. So he has the funding. We were supposed to meet him tonight on the phone, but he couldn't make it. But our ending date's supposed to be January 28th, I think, supposedly.
We shall see.
Now, it was supposed to be in December. We tried to get it done in 2021. It didn't happen because of the holidays. So I think in this situation, we're a little different than somebody else. We're not working with a big DSL. So there's a little bit more of financial bank issues here. Right. We did, we got our asking price. I was shocked. I was surprised. It was our broker. We did get a broker. I think that, like some of the gentlemen have said, that the attorneys really helped us out the most. I think that's the most key, is getting an attorney really understands the contracts, the wording, and he's really helped us out quite a bit. The broker, he got us the contacts. I don't know. Broker, let's have some questions. I think Mike Abernathy says, where they say, don't listen to what they say, it's maybe not be true. So it's kind of our experience just to listen to our attorney most of the time. So it's been an amazing experience. But now financially, we're all secured. We're ready. We've done a lot of deployment. Once we sell the practice, is this going to be amazing experience? I'm hoping right now we're still in the trenches. We're trying to keep the numbers up, everything. I still got to keep it going. I can't let it go. I can't tell my staff. I want them to stay here. It's been going since end of September. I think this has been going on. So it's been eating it alive. So everybody sounds relaxed and having a good time. So I'm still in the trenches. Trying to get this going, so it's still, I'm like a little anxious and a little anxiety until the paper's signed.
Well, the good news is it will end, and you have what we call short timers disease, and we're all been there. Yeah. One of the things that I think you two emulate so much, because there are a lot of people, dentists, not even just dentists and pharmacists, doesn't matter what they're doing, that are just feel like they're stuck, and your ability to trust and take a step with David, and we all give David kudos. Amazing. But we also have to look at yourselves to say that you were willing to listen and do something and act. That's the thing, and that's what you two did. Because Gertrude, I know you were just like, oh my gosh, there's no end to this, and then in a short period of time you turned it around because of the decisions that you made. So I really appreciate your share. I think it's such a big story. It's really touched my heart. I talk about you guys all the time. So thanks. Great job.
That's not over yet.
No, but it will be, I promise you. And Gertrude is always so funny. I say that and she goes, I don't understand what the big deal is. I said, the big deal is you were just done. So great job, and thank you. Great job. All right, Sharon and Dean.
Just to let you know, Gertrude, I just told my staff yesterday what was going on. So
how did that go?
Pretty well, really. There was a few tears and all that, but most of the staff took it pretty well, and they're like, well, we have to celebrate this. This is
that's
good
great
news for you. And I said, well, yeah, I think this is a really good dentist that's taken over, and I think, he'll take care of you guys. So that was one of the big things.
Good
Yeah.
share, Mark. Very good. Thank you again. All right, Sharon and Dan, I know you're knocking on the door, you're getting close. Talk to us.
We joined Freedom Founders, I think it was after the close down. I realized I didn't really want to go back to the office. And so that, with Freedom Founders has gotten us focused into the alternatives and, just really focusing on, do we want cash flow or do we want growth? So targeting where we're going to put our money. And as far as where we're at in the practice sale, it's pretty traditional. We have a broker. We didn't do all the checking like maybe we should have. If we'd heard this video, we probably would have brought our broker's agreement to an attorney, but we didn't. And I would say the broker's like, yeah, whatever. We did get good referrals to the attorney, I think. And we have an LOI, and we were supposed to close at the end of February, and now it's extended to March 14th. So that's kind of the short of it. And it's just it's a woman who's really into fishing, and they're envisioning, they've gone into the office and they love that you see the harbor and everything. Yeah. So we were told it's really, really, really hard, almost impossible to sell a practice where we are. And, we made a video. We learned that from Candace and David. We got a video and we sent it to the broker and said, hey, about every month, I just would think of something to touch base with her on to let her know that I believe this practice can sell. And so here we are in rural Oregon, and I hope that we will have, I see Heather and her husband taking the practice over. That's and awesome. By April 1st for free.
Well, one of the things about you two, you guys have such a passion for life. I mean, every time I see kite surfing on TV, I'm thinking that is just so impressive that you guys do that. And it's funny because I've been on the fit calls with you and watched your transition as you're moving through this. But I mean, I know it's going to happen. And when Dan told me, the guy saying, I can see where the boat's going to be, my boat's going to be out there. I mean, this is going to go through, and you just have your faith. It's going to work out, and it's going to free you guys up to live the life the way you want to live. So,
well, awesome. I think, Greg, for me, like Sharon said, learning about how to really get a handle on our budget and track it. And look at where our expenses are, and look what our income is, and look at the numbers. Because we started just emptying out the stock market and deploying it with something that was stable, and then looking at money coming in and seeing that it really was working, and we were getting closer and closer to that freedom number. And not having to worry about whether the stock market was -2% or -4% or plus 13% or however 20%. It's going. When it's at plus 20%, we're going, did we make the right choice? But then when it's -6, 2 weeks later, we're going, okay, yeah, we're on the right track here. And we really owe all of that to Freedom Founders, because the tracking, the budgeting, like Sharon said, investing and not spending, learning the difference between those things, and then looking at cash flow versus growth, and trying to get things diversified has really been a huge help.
Right. Well, kudos to you too, because you've done a great job with it, and you've come a very, very long ways, and this is all going to work out really well for you. I know I don't want to go too long, but Ben, I'm going to put you on the spot, because you're in a position, you're thinking about selling. I can see your trepidation. What is it going to look like afterwards? So you've listened to all this. What are your thoughts tonight?
Great question, Greg. And, I think there were some really fantastic nuggets from every single one of you. So thank you so much for sharing. you know, Jim, I think Jim said something that really caught me right off the bat. And he said, you know, when there's equity to harvest, if you really have a business, you need to harvest the equity.
Right.
And I kind of, in my own mind, was kind of taking that one step further and thinking, you know, if I really have a business and there's really equity that's available to harvest, it makes sense to me that I should be able to harvest that equity and then still have the option to come back and practice after I'm done if I want to, whether that means I buy another practice, I scratch start another practice, or whatever if I choose to practice, or I continue to practice on like Jim's doing. But I think that harvesting equity piece was really great. You know, a lot of you mentioned, you know, having worked with brokers. That's something that honestly I've been, you know, kind of very tentatively wading into the shallow end of that pool, knowing that there are landmines there, and you know, just the advice to make sure you have a very competent attorney if you're gonna go that route, and just make sure that you're willing to spend the time to read through those contracts, because there's gold in there for someone. It's either going to be for you if you leave it there, or it's going to be for the broker if you don't get those clauses out of there. So I love that piece. Honestly, I'm just so impressed with the confidence that you all have moved forward with, and man, kudos to you all. I know in Freedom Founders, myself and Jim and Greg and many others have been around here for several years and haven't gotten to the place where many of you are as far as practice transition in that time. So I'm impressed, and I look forward to continuing to learn from many of you. This family is full of people that have different experiences, and the fact that we can all grow from each other's shared experience, I think, is what makes this community so rich. So thanks for sharing your stories, everyone. And Greg, thanks for your awesome job hosting tonight.
Oh, thank you.
You know, I think I'm kind of the avatar for the person who needs to watch this video.
Yes.
So I'm glad that I'm really grateful that you came up with the idea to do it, and that it's come to fruition now. So I think this will be a valuable asset to the community.
Greg, I just got one quick point, if I might.
Of
The
course.
one thing I want to mention is it seems to me, and I don't know why it is, but we always wait for someone to come give us an offer. I would have a deal, your deal ready to go. What do you want? Back engineer what you really want out of it, and then bring the deal. I'm amazed that everyone waits for the deal to come to them. They wait for the contract to come to them. Why are we doing that in this market? I would say I'd flip it. You know, here's the offer, here's the lease, here's the triple net, here's the, and you know, and I'm finding that that's what I would have done differently. I would have just come with a stronger offer, not come in as a low ball and never give the first offer. If I were to do it again, I would come back with even more of what I wanted. I got what I wanted, but like on the goodwill, we negotiated from 65% to 85%.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of taxes off the table. So don't just take the first deal, I guess is what I would say.
Totally agree with you. And Ben, you talked about what Jim said, and you know, me have been out of it for a while looking back. That in a number of your speakers, David, have said that up on the podium. Now is the time. Take your money off the table. Ben, you said it best. If you want to keep working, do something else, or do another project. It doesn't really matter. Take the money while it's hot, while it's there. It will not last forever. I just want to thank you all for your time. I know it went a little longer than we'd hoped, but really your messages and what you share makes things like Gertrude and Bob and Dan and Sharon possible to see. And I know that people ultimately watch this are going to go, wow, you can do that. Like Jim just said, you know, go market it yourself. That's really the correct way to do it in this market. So thank you all for your time. Alex and David, thank you for the opportunity for Ben and I to host it, and just hope that it does some good moving forward.
Congratulations to all of you.
Yeah.
Great job.
Great job, you guys. Excellent.
Yeah,
Y'all have a great evening. Thank you.